The second group met this morning with their client and let them explain everything. And without further ado, we have Amanda here.
So my name's Erin Bridge. I'm graduating in the LPP program.
My name is Amanda Schwartz. I'm also graduating from the LPP program.
And my name is Amanda Meyer, and I'm graduating from the MERC program.
So our task is gravely different from the other group's project. We basically had to look at the farmers market and bounty buck low income situation in the city of Boston. And by bounty buck, I mean that Boston now allows individuals who are on SNAP benefits or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program to use their EBT cards at farmers markets. And after this sort of expansion to allowing EBT, the City of Boston, in partnership with the Food Project, developed this Bounty Bucks program in 2008. And what that is it provides low-income residents a dollar-for-dollar match when they use their EBT card at a local farmer's market. So if I went to the farmer's market with my EBT card and I wanted to spend $5 on my card, the city would give me $5 extra in Bounty Bucks coupons. So this type of program sort of expands the access of fresh and local food to low-income residents in the city of Boston.
So we ran into the same problem the other group did, which is what was asked of us really changed and shifted over the semester. So what our final request was, and we'll go into this more, but the Bounty Bucks program is very successful. It was piloted in 2008, and since then we found that it grew something like over 5,000%. So given this growth, one of the biggest problems is how to keep a funding base for this program, given that it's definitely in the 2011 summer farmers market season, the growth is going to outpace how much funding they have. So our entire project, and we passed around, we have 2 extra copies, one going around the outer circle and one in the inner. What we've done is based our recommendations for how to improve this program or expand it based off of the anticipation of this growth this summer and beyond. So essentially we were asked to do 4 to 5 things. The first thing is really a glorified way to get more money. So we're trying to say, how can we look at other organizations that give coupons like the Bounty Buck system? How can we get them into this mix and for them to give us their funds for this kind of program so that the Bounty Bucks program can grow? So what we did is we created and we'll go into this in depth, I'm just doing a little bit of an agenda. We created a partnerships document, so that's the first thing we've done. The second thing we were asked is, about halfway through the semester, after we had talked with a number of different farmers market managers and stakeholders, was it looks like one of the ways to actually expand the Bounty Bucks program is to implement credit and debit card use at markets. So they said, we'll put together everything we would need to be able to implement that this summer in a pilot program. So we've come up with a guide for that. The third thing we were asked, along with the pilot idea for a credit debit card system, was to put together an RFP, a request for proposals, for what would be a citywide or potentially statewide system for a wireless service provider so that all of the markets operate on the same credit debit card terminal. The fourth thing that we were asked, actually it's not up here, but was also to kind of look in the long term, what would a market system, farmers market system, look like on a token-like currency? Because a lot of other farmers markets in other cities use just tokens. So we did incorporate this into our credit debit pilot guide, because that is a token-based system. We also had conversations about a partnership with this program and the MBTA, a healthy living campaign. So they asked us to kind of think that through and identify what is a transit line that runs through a lot of farmers market that would make sense for them to do advertising on. Given that not only do we want to expand how much money Bounty Bucks is able to have in its annual budget, but also really expand how many people are able to utilize the program because it is so important and it has grown so much, but there are thousands more participants on SNAP who are not currently aware of the program or really could benefit from it more. And then the last thing we did, we were asked to take all of the conversations we've had and the research we've done and really come up with what are the 5 things that make a farmer's market successful so that in the future other student groups or the director of the program, Edith Murnane, can look at how each farmer's market does, because there is data collected for sales per season, and say, okay, this one isn't doing well, let's look at some of the reasons why it might not be working. So those are the real 5 things we were asked to do, and we're just going to go through quickly, not as much detail as we did this morning, because it does get a little dense. And we've put this together for them in a binder, and we've given them everything electronically so that they can take what we've done and work with it, or pass it on, or use it in this season and the ones to come. So the first thing we did is this partnerships document that I talked about. It's really it's a 2-pager. It's pretty much a proposal, but it doesn't have a direct ask, and it is a tool for the director of food policy to give to groups like Mass General, which are other organizations that we know right now are giving out coupons to use at farmers market for their constituents. So we've given her really a package. It's a 2-pager she can use that shows the growth of the Bounty Bucks program. And so it's really basic chart, but you can just see that it started as a pilot at $1,300, and last year was $77,000, and we really do anticipate continued growth. So basically it's saying, look how great Bounty Bucks is doing. Based on studies we've looked into, this program is working so well because coupons are given out at the actual farmers market. So this is a wonderful opportunity for your organization to participate. Here's what a partnership could look like if at $1,000 or your organization can adopt this market. And so we've done some marketing materials. This is just a poster they could do, just showing where they could put their logo. And we've also done, is the Bounty Buck? Yeah, right. This is what a Bounty Buck actually looks like right now. And we've done, you can put your logo here, and just this kind of this attractive package, which really is just, please give us your money.
Okay, so I'm gonna introduce this pilot program that Amanda started talking about. So after talking with a bunch of farmers market managers during this 3-month period and researching other cities' sort of EBT programs, we found out 2 things. One being that the current terminals that the Boston farmers markets use have the capability to not only allow EBT transactions, but also allow credit and debit transactions on the same wireless terminal. They're just currently not using that. And the second thing we sort of found out is that other cities in the country have transferred to using credit and debit, and they have been successful throughout that process. So we've come up with this pilot plan for how a credit and debit system would work in Boston. And there are a couple of benefits that we outlined for the city to going to this credit and debit token system. So the first benefit is greater access to fresh and healthy food. So the Food Trust put out a report recently that stated that Boston has as much as 30% fewer supermarkets per capita compared to national averages. And this lack of access to healthy food can have a negative impact on health of the residents in Boston. So expanding to a debit and credit system not only could be more convenient for individuals who don't carry around cash, but also can expand the access to healthy and fresh food. A second benefit to expanding to this credit and debit system is that it will put more money in the farmers' pockets. So we sort of discussed that we're sort of in an electronic purchase-based society. Not a lot of people carry around handfuls of cash anymore. And currently, if you're walking by a farmer's market and only have a credit card, you can't purchase the produce there. So credit and debit users who want to spend money at the farmer's market now can. And a DC farmer said that his sales increased by 30% just by switching to this credit and debit system. So another benefit to transferring to this system is a greater incentive to attract farmers to urban areas. So throughout our conversations during the semester, we sort of realized that farmers are reluctant to sell their produce in urban areas, especially in lower income urban areas. So this increased volume with credit and debit users would produce higher sales because the customers wouldn't be limited to the cash that they have on hand, and then greater sales and greater volume will obviously attract more farmers to the city. Another benefit is that it would reduce the stigma for SNAP recipients. So Amanda will go into this a little bit more, but we're sort of proposing this token system. So currently SNAP users go to the farmer's market manager and they do their transaction and they physically get those bounty bucks that you saw on the screen there. So everyone at the market is sort of able to see, this person's using a bounty buck, this person's low income, this person's on SNAP benefits. If we create this credit and debit process, whether with the tokens or even if we just wanted to use something similar to the bounty buck as a paper currency, both the credit and debit users and the EBT users would get these paper currencies or these tokens, so it would sort of reduce the stigma for SNAP recipients. And finally, expanding to this credit and debit program would lower the wireless terminal and transaction fee costs. So if all card users, credit, debit, and EBT are using the same terminal, the monthly wireless fees and the transaction costs would be more widely dispersed, which would result in lower cost per transaction.
So then the next step that we did is we pretty much just outlined how this credit and debit pilot would actually look like if they wanted to implement it this upcoming summer, which is something that they've expressed interest in doing. So we've broken down every single step along the way and tried to come up with next steps for the city in that process. The first is as to how to go about implementing this token-based system. And so what we've done for this is we've thought through what the different tokens might look like. And so the idea is that rather than using the bounty bucks that they currently use now, we will switch instead to this token-based system, which is being used in other cities. And for those who are using their EBT or SNAP benefit, they will receive the bounty bucks in blue up there. They will be in $1 increments because according to the bounty bucks program, they have a $1 standard. They have to be given $1 increments. And then for the credit and debit card users, we would recommend they be given tokens in $5 increments. And the idea here is that they will go to the farmer's market manager when they first get to the farmer's market. They will swipe their card, whether it's their SNAP card or whether it is their credit and debit card, and they will receive the tokens. They will then take these tokens and go to the individual farm stands at that farmer's market. They can go to any single farm stand. Currently, a lot of farmers markets, the bigger ones, including City Hall and Copley Square, have individual farm stands that have these credit card terminals, but it's not across the board. And so the idea here would be that using this system, individual farm stands wouldn't have to deal with the wireless transactions, and instead it would all be run through the farmer's market manager instead. So they'd redeem these. If you're using your credit and debit card token, if you're using your credit and debit tokens, then you would be eligible to receive cash back from the individual farm stand. So if you go and give them $4 or $5 tokens for a total of $20, but only spend $18, then you'd be given $2 back in cash. And one of the extra steps that we did for the city is that we actually did some research into what are the different kinds of tokens that exist, what are the different token providers, where can the city buy these tokens, what are the different designs they could use, and we put together an appendix for them that shows the different cost breakdown depending on where they purchased the tokens from, how many they purchased, and the types of design that they choose to use. One of the other things that we discussed this morning when we met with the city is that these tokens offer another opportunity for their partnerships. So if a given organization like Mass General were to partner with the Bounty Bucks organization, or with Bounty Bucks, then they could have their organization's name put on the back of the token. So it increases awareness of that organization as well. The next step would be to address issues of cash flow, and at the end of every single day, how it would work is that the individual farmers would be responsible for sorting their tokens, and we tried to make it as easy as possible. Green, blue, separate them, redeem these to the farmers market managers, who will then be responsible for the accounting. The accounting is no different than what's currently done right now with the Bounty Bucks program. The farmers market manager is responsible for collecting the Bounty Bucks that are redeemed at the end of every day and inputting into this spreadsheet how much is spent with EBT benefits and what is the Bounty Buck match, how much of that was redeemed. So the same exact system would be used here. We just add a column for credit and debit. This is how much was issued and this is how much was redeemed. In order to do this, what we found is that it's most beneficial if the farmers market manager has an account set up for their organization, a bank account set up with some sort of level of base funding. The idea is that farmers want to be reimbursed as readily as possible, and so if you have a base level of funding in the account, for instance, Grove Hall this past summer experimented with $500 in their account. Then at the end of the day, you can reimburse farmers, cut them a check right there, or at least ideally within a week or two, cut them a check so that they are reimbursed for these credit and debit transactions. So in terms of next steps for the city, we definitely want to make sure that they identify which tokens that they want to use, which token provider, the different designs, and then ensure that all of the farmers at the pilot market are on the same page with how the system would work, the redemption, the spreadsheet changes, and so forth. In doing this sort of system, we've discovered that there will definitely be additional transaction costs associated with this type of system. So currently right now, when an EBT user swipes their card at the wireless terminal, the market's charged 10 cents per transaction. And that's because it's an EBT card, and if you switch to credit and debit, those transactions carry anywhere from a 20 to 24 cent transaction fee, cost per transaction. And so the idea here is that you could try to offset these additional fees in one of two ways. We noticed that in New York, the system they use charges the individual farmers 25 cents per transaction that's used for the credit and debit system. So for every $5 that's spent in credit and debit at a given farm stand, that farm stand is only reimbursed $4.75. Across the board, the farmers markets where farm stand people had a little bit of pushback initially, but then with time they realized that it's actually a beneficial system because it's bringing in so many additional sales that they didn't have otherwise. The second proposal is to do a system like they use in Rhode Island, where for every single person that has a credit or debit transaction, they charge a $1 flat fee across the board, and this helps to offset both the transaction costs for the wireless terminal, for the given purchase, and for the overall fees that are associated with the credit and debit system. One of the things that we found, though, is that given the problems that the farmers market managers have had with the wireless terminals, there's a bunch of new technology that they could use instead of using the wireless terminals. Two different systems that could be used that we found. One is a jack that goes right into the farmers market's phone. It can be used in an iPhone or any sort of Android phone. And the idea here is that you just swipe the card. When that card is swiped, it's hooked up to an app. That app then automatically allows the farmers market manager to be reimbursed for that transaction, so then the money gets back to the farmers quicker. A different system is an app called Interfence, and they have teamed up with Merchant Focus, which is a third-party intermediary. And the idea with this is that you don't have any sort of jack to plug in. It's just you use your phone, you have an app on your phone, and you key in the person's credit card number, and you're able to accept credit card transactions that way as well. So there are ways to go about doing this without even using the wireless terminals, which we lay out in case the city would like to explore this in the future. There are also some really interesting ways to help expand Bounty Bucks using this credit and debit card system. The first is to when people are going to use their credit and debit cards, is to promote Bounty Bucks at the farmers market manager stands. We realize that right now there's kind of a disconnect between traditional farmers market customers and the farmer market managers. They don't really come into contact. So this provides a way for the two to come into contact and for Bounty Bucks to be advertised at that point of contact. At the same time, the people who are using their credit and debit cards can be asked if they want to, offer some sort of donation to the Bounty Bucks program. The same way when you go to a grocery store now, you may be asked, would you like to donate $1 to, March of Dimes or whatever the cause may be. And so the idea here would be to use your card in the same sort of way. Other marketing opportunities are to create a campaign that's directly targeted at a given customer base. So here we have an example of what it would look like for if the city were to implement this at the City Hall Farmers Market. You could create advertisements that say, same fresh produce, more ways to buy it. So the idea is that this advertising will help to nudge credit and debit card users to use their cards when they may not otherwise shop at farmers markets. At the same time, it brings awareness to the Bounty Bucks program. And then finally, the last thing that we need to address is that the farmers market managers that we've spoken to said, this is really great, we'd absolutely love to implement a credit and debit card system, but the problem right now is that we're already responsible for so many things at the market. We can't really take the time and dedicate so much of our own resources to implementing this. We need some sort of help. And so the idea is that the city could market some sort of, or recruit some sort of intern for the individual markets that are doing this. The time commitment for the student would be minimal. It would be a few hours, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, depending on how often the farmers market is open. And it would be a way for the city to get involved with the local students, as it loves to do currently. It could target high school students or college students, anyone who's interested in business or accounting and finance, food security issues, food policy, agriculture. There's a whole range, program management, and so forth. So the city could target students to help assist with this program.
Yeah, sure. So this is sort of not on the slide, but we created an RFP, which is a request for proposal for the city, which is also in that packet. A couple of the farmers market managers that we talked to all had problems with the wireless terminals that they use, whether that be that the terminals break down or the customer service is bad. And we've sort of decided with the city that putting a citywide, using citywide terminals for all 21 markets would greatly benefit not only the farmers market managers, but the whole farmers market system in Boston. So we sort of just created this 1 or 2 pager using language that the city already has on their website for RFPs in Boston, and sort of outline information that we think providers would need to tell the city when they're answering this proposal. So, an explanation of the project plan, an outline of all the costs, whether that's for the terminal, cost per transaction, monthly wireless fees, etc. A detailed explanation of their customer service guarantees. We heard a lot of comments from the farmers market managers about the lack of customer service, or the customer service representatives not even really understanding what it means to swipe their EBT card, or how much transaction fees for using their EBT card are. And then finally, we decided that this provider would have to sort of explain how the system could be promoted to using a statewide wireless terminals or wireless providers for Massachusetts.
And the idea behind that, just from the other research we had done, just to explain a little bit, is that other states use a statewide system. So right now in Massachusetts, it costs about $650 per terminal, which is really expensive. In New York, they're significantly less expensive because they have a collective bargaining agreement. So the idea behind this is to create that sort of collective bargaining agreement using one service provider to realize lower rates across the board. And then the next thing that they asked us to look at was to identify if the city and the MBTA were to create a healthy living campaign, what route should they target? So they want to essentially market to people along a given transit route. Look, you should be shopping at farmers markets for healthy, locally grown food, and you should be riding and using public transportation because it's better for you, it's healthy. Doing these things helps promote healthy living. So what we did here was we took the 21 farmers markets in Boston, as identified with the little green circles, and then it's kind of difficult to see on this map up here, but we provide them with the map on paper as well. And if you can tell, the the little purple squares represent train stops, and the little black dots represent bus stops. And so what we found when we did an overlay with a map of the MBTA is that at least five, and potentially six if you include one at the very top, the Boston Medical Center Farmers Market, fall along a specific route. And so what we were trying to do next is identify what route this is, and we found that it's the 28 bus that goes through Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan. What's really important about this in identifying that route is that the Farm Trust report that came out last month or 2 months ago that talks about the lack of nutritious and healthy food in given neighborhoods, it said that 3 of the 4 most underserved neighborhoods in Boston are Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. And so if the city were to target this bus route, it serves several purposes. It not only promotes the Healthy Living campaign, but it also helps to bring awareness to the Bounty Bucks program, and the people living in these low-income neighborhoods are the most likely to be able to utilize the Bounty Bucks program. And so in doing so, it helps to bring fresh food to these people, it expands awareness, and ultimately, tries to increase their purchasing power of these low-income residents in order to buy healthier food.
And just for anybody that can't see, it's Blue Hill Avenue, basically. Down the stretch of Blue Hill Avenue from Dudley Square all the way down to Mattapan Square.
The other thing that we found is that there are several markets that fall along the Ashmont-Mattapan line of the train as well. And so when we were discussing it with them today, the reason we chose not to target that is because that line reaches a broader base. So it goes into Cambridge and it goes to Braintree, and so we felt that the 28 bus would be the most narrowly targeted investment. As it turns out, and the cost of the investment is actually going to be very minimal, as the space on the train and bus is going to be donated by the MBTA, and so as a result, they could also target the Ashmont-Mattapan line as well to reach additional low-income residents.
So, kind of the culminating 5 characteristics that we've identified as being, the real critical points that make a farmer's market successful. We did a very quick, not even a one-pager about just really what these 5 things are. So the first thing, and I'm sure that maybe you guys really found this in your project also, that really these things apply to any business, I would think. So the first one is really understanding your customer base, who a given farmer's market in Grove Hall is going to serve a different population than the one right in City Hall based on its hours of operation. So it's important to know that when seeing which farmers are coming with which different kinds of products, how big is the market going to be, how little, that's an important point. The second is a centralized location. So for farmers markets that are around just heavy foot traffic, they really do advertise themselves, and if there's a farmers market that's not in a really centralized location, it is going to be a challenge for them to be successful. And one of the things we've realized over this semester, we spoke with one of the farmers market managers and helped her realize that she could actually change her location if she needed to, because that was one of her challenges that she, and I don't think she didn't realize that she could do that. She thought she was, stuck with her slot. Along with that is access, and that's not just that it's in a centralized location, but that one of the biggest barriers to actually being able to purchase food is how you get to the farmer's market. So if it's in an area that's, like we said, near a bus or a T, that's important, but also if it's not, that there is some kind of parking or some kind of way for customers of the farmer's market to not find it very troublesome to actually get there, especially given that a farmer's market is in a set period of time and it has limited hours. That's important. Going along with that, visibility is really important. And we mean visibility so that people know that there is a farmer's market, but that people also know when the farmer's market is open. It's different for a supermarket that you generally know is going to be open from 8 to 7 or 9 to 5. Farmers markets really differ based on their day and their hours, and it's important that the community sees this somewhere. So what we've tried to do, if you haven't noticed, is that really give Edith and the program templates of what a poster could look like. So the poster we did for advertising credit debit card could also easily be put into Dewey Square Market is open these days, these hours. It seems really simple, but for a farmer's market, this is actually something important to think about because they're temporary, so there's not a permanent location for that kind of advertisement. And the last thing, we had a nice point of conversation with Edith today about the fifth one, which is passionate farmers market managers, because she was one herself before. And this is really important because farmers market managers work extremely hard, and it's not their job does not end when they close up the market. There's a lot of accounting that goes in, especially when you introduce a program like Bounty Bucks and SNAP and credit and debit cards. So the program's success really relies on the managers being excited about this program, really seeing the benefits of it. And when we talked through all of this with Edith, she said, you know, I have some farmers market managers in mind that I'm going to move forward with this credit debit system because I know that they are passionate, and that's really what's going to make it successful. So that was a pretty interesting point that I wasn't expecting.
Okay, so just to wrap things up, as we've sort of stated throughout this whole process, the Bounty Bucks program is working and it's ever growing. So by the end of sort of this project and the presentation we gave today, we were able to sort of lay out guidelines for expanding the Bounty Bucks program and to improve access to local and healthy food for all residents of Boston. So the partnerships will allow the program to get more money. It also will give other organizations awareness of Bounty Bucks and allow partner organizations to actually promote the Bounty Bucks program to their specific constituents. The MBTA campaign can have promotional materials on the buses that inform individuals in low-income areas about the Bounty Bucks program and give them information on how to access local and fresh food. And finally, the credit and debit system will allow all card users to make purchases at farmers markets, getting more money to the farmers and healthier produce to its customers.
Well, great. Let me ask a question. Having watched you all semester, what was the problem that Edith defined at the very beginning? Remember the first meeting?
I can quote it.
Yes.
Edith said, get the money off the table.
Get more money off the table.
Get more money off the table.
Right. And that was her problem definition.
It took us about a month to actually figure out what she meant by that.
At least.
Yes.
So, and this is one of the classic examples of, you know, clients thinking that they're being clear about what they want, and the team going, you know, and subsequent meetings actually clarifying what that meant and also changing the nature of the project entirely.
Well, one of the great things about having that sort of clarity and trying to figure out what it is that she was looking for initially is that in that given month we were able to start doing outreach to farmers market managers and to identify additional issues that when we brought them to her attention, she said, oh yeah, let's figure out a way to do that, or you know, definitely, oh I'd love that. And so what turned into initially a marketing campaign, we really were able to expand and bring many more issues to the table.
Because originally, this was, as I think I recall, originally in the first month, it was looking like it was going to be a very technical kind of approach.
Yeah, we were thinking
about how to redesign the Bounty Buck, or how to redesign.
Yeah, we were originally thinking after our first meeting that we wanted to create this sort of gift card almost, so that like Mass General could give a gift card with their logo on it and everything like that.
And then our second meeting with this group, we decided we were going to write a proposal. And then it just kind of worked from there. So it did shift.
So biggest surprise in terms of what you ended up having to do in this project?
I think for me, the biggest surprise was how much we learned about credit, debit, transaction costs, and transaction fees, which was way more technical than I think we thought a policy project would have to be.
In fact, you didn't have any idea how credit card systems worked at all.
Right.
And that's definitely something we wouldn't have taught, certainly. But at least you figured out how to actually find information, which is important.
Well, not just that, but to think about credit and debit card transactions and the fees that are associated, and then the policy decision you have to make in terms of, okay, who's going to pay for these costs? then doing the research into what is being done elsewhere and how can we go about offsetting these costs for the farmers or the customers and how to go about doing that.
I also think how much actually goes into running a farmer's market. If you look online, you can see that they're only open like 2 or 3 hours, some of them 2 or 3 hours, once a week or twice a week. And that's not the only time that they're having to, you know, work on the farmer's market, so.
And this is a project that was important to the mayor. Why?
Because this is one of his babies, and he created the Bounty Bucks program. He wants his name to remain on the Bounty Bucks program, and he wants to expand it. And I think that, especially given new studies that are coming out saying Boston has some of the least access to healthy food, he's trying to promote healthy living in Boston, whether it's through the biking campaign or whether it's through Bounty Bucks. And so when studies come out that show Boston has limited access to healthy foods, this becomes all the more important and raises to the top of his agenda and proves that this is something that he really needs to invest his time and energy into.
Sure. And you have a program like Main Street, which is also important to the mayor. So you have the policy and the politics are totally intertwined here, obviously. The agenda of a mayor is very powerful.
But we discovered too another challenge was that there are even more politics involved because the mayor's name is on it. They don't actually give that much money, and it's mostly run by the food project. So when we spoke with the food project, you know, definitely Amanda talked to them, sense her frustration that the mayor's name has to be on everything, but the food project is actually doing it. So we definitely kept it in mind in putting the mayor symbol and the food project logo everywhere.
It's open for questions. Anybody? Yeah.
I know we talked about sort of hours of operation, like along the 28, those farmers markets, when are they actually open? Like generally, I know they're all probably all over the place, but
I don't know offhand, but they're all generally, I want to say afternoon-ish,
right.
weekday.
Usually from like 4 to 7.
Yeah.
okay. Because I would thinking about like ridership, and I know that the T right now is sort of trying to push off-peak ridership. So I know that if like a farmer's market were open on a Saturday, the T would be all about trying to promote, you know, ride on Saturday, ride on Sunday, ride during the middle of the day. They really want to try to promote
But
that.
for the Bounty Bucks campaign, that's exactly not what we want. We don't want them to ride. I mean, we want the highest customer base. If the highest customer base is during the peak hours, 4 to 7 p.m., and that's when we want them to ride the T.
Right.
So I see what you're saying, but in terms of a marketing strategy to expand Bounty Bucks, that's not something we would want.
Well, I'm thinking if you advertise on the 28th, it doesn't matter when, but I think that it would be, you know, I think the T would be more happy to participate if it were if some of those markets were open during the off-peak season or off-peak times, just because that's sort of where the T is going right now. But I think the 28th is an excellent route to target. It's the highest ridership of the system. So you're obviously you're gonna hit a lot of people advertising on a route like that. So.
The other thing too, in terms of the individual markets, is that the city of Boston actually has very little control over the individual markets. They're mostly run by different nonprofit organizations or through, you know, hospitals or what have you. And so even though the city says, you know, the city of Boston has 21 farmers markets, they're not really the city of Boston's markets. And so even if the city were to encourage people to use Bounty Bucks or encourage this healthy living campaign with the MBTA, the city has absolutely no control over hours or location. So the city can assist in, for instance, the Alston market who wants to potentially move. The city can't say, here's the location I think you should move to, but it can say, you know, if you identify a location you'd like to move to, we can assist with permitting and make that happen really smoothly. And so the city in many ways doesn't have as much control as it would like to over these markets, so they only have so much leeway.
But they can make it easier or harder.
Right.
Certainly. Let's open up. Any questions? Anybody? Dan.
This is a huge scope of work.
Yeah.
So this is immense for a semester. Now the Bounty Bucks program has increased by 5,000%. Is that the amount of funding to the program has increased 5,000%?
That's the amount of sales, including the match sales, so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you spend $5, you get $10, or you get $5 in Bounty Bucks, that's
So
$10 to the, it's cumulative.
And the matching funds then, the actual Bounty Bucks themselves, are funded by
Donations, different organizations, the
donations,
mayor's fresh
and
food campaign.
those donors are the ones that get their names on the actual Bounty Bucks?
Not at the moment. We don't actually have, I mean, we propose
This is the
getting
food
those
project?
funders on
Those
board.
things.
The food project, I
Yeah,
don't
food
actually know to what level the food project actually funds the Bounty Bucks program, so much as it runs the Bounty Bucks
You
program.
get grants.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we propose here is that there's room for different organizations to advertise on the Bounty Bucks or on the tokens or on these different
Right.
marketing materials so that it can help to bring more money to the table.
Excellent. I think this project's great too. The idea of using an app, like everyone has a smartphone, and if you go to the Apple Store, they just ring you out right there on the floor, which just seems like a no-brainer for this program, like you guys have mentioned. Eliminating kind of the middleman of going and getting your tokens and then going and then having the farmers having to re-deposit the tokens and get their money back. Are there examples of any markets using these right now, or?
Copley Square is trying to pilot a program right now with the state's help to try to make it so that every single farm stand owner has a phone that can just swipe cards. There's a few problems with the system. First of all, as they've realized with many farm stands, is that the actual farmer and many times doesn't even have so much as an email address, let alone an iPhone.
As we
And
saw in
so-
restaurants, right?
So I mean, it's so in theory, you know, all of us in higher academia would like to think that everyone in the world has a smartphone, but in reality, that's not the case. And so what they're trying to do is the state's trying to come up with grants that would provide each and every farmer with an iPhone in order to do that, but it's expensive and it's very dependent on the level of funding they can get. And then what happens? Do you give them the phone for the entire year, or is it only for 6 months? What are the contract obligations as a result of that? The other issue is that there was another issue. Oh, the other issue is that at the given farm stand, if one person has the phone and it's a very busy farm stand, say you've got 4 employees there, then you have to have one person that's dedicated to being able to swipe the cards or key in the cards. You don't necessarily have just one farmer at any given farm stand. At the bigger farmers markets like City Hall and Copley Square, there are multiple people working, and so you'd have to stop the process and divert attention away just to have someone's card swiped. So the idea of going to the farmer's market manager would allow every single farm stand to be able to participate in this credit and debit system without having to have an iPhone at each individual stand and without having to take away resources from that farmer as they're trying to sell their.
Everybody behind the counter at the farm stand could actually just take
Right.
money.
Yeah, the same way they would with cash right
Right.
now.
And one thing too is that we were asked to do short-term interventions, and so, and also to think about the long-term and think what are the trends. Well, the trends are really that wouldn't be surprised in a few years that farmers all have iPhones.
Or at least email addresses.
Right.
That's-
So given that we can think about the long term, there are these apps available, but given that they are going to implement a program, pilot it at a few sites this summer, this was what was reasonable for them to do.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Good. Actually, I was thinking you'd probably very, very, very shortly be able to buy a bulk amount of sort of semi-smartphones. They don't have to be full-blown iPhones. They could certainly be more stripped-down Android kinds of platforms where the app, you could just hand them, give them to the farmers who are at these markets, and the screen reader, the swiper. So I think with a few years, you might see the technological
Right.
capacity to do a much less expensive sort of distributed version of this.
In a few years.
Yeah,
That's
very
not-
soon.
Yeah, we were.
And
Oh yeah, you're not that far away, I think.
The other challenge too is in the beginning we came up with these lofty ideas of all these technical things that could change, and then we realized we actually didn't have a budget to work off of,
Yeah.
and that we were not trying to give them ideas that cost a lot of money.
Right.
So
Which is
that was
great.
actually, I think, one of our biggest
Sure.
challenges in the beginning.
You did look at markets that were using a token system.
Yes.
How is that working?
Well, very
Yeah.
well.
Well,
Was it so they all liked it? Was it increasing sales?
Yes.
Really?
So
there's
it's-
actually, is Fall River, there's a market Fall River who's using it, and we actually researched that a little bit and gave them even their specs of how much their tokens cost.
I mean, DC's moved to a token-based system. New York State, the entire statewide system is very organized. The entire statewide system all uses tokens. Rhode Island and Providence, they all use a token-based system as well. So it's the norm.
But it's not, to be honest, it's not different than this.
Right.
It's just shape.
Yeah.
Any questions, thoughts?